Hello, hello. Welcome to Top Shelf Backpacking Trail Fails. This is episode 6, part 3 of my wife's first and so far only backpacking trip. Quick recap, day 1 ended with a crossing of the Sandy River, which left us wet. Day 2, fairly uneventful, other than being awoken at 11 o'clock at night by another hiker, well, by my wife waking me up, worried about another hiker. And then the rain starting. So day 3 began, probably woke up around 7 and heard lots of rainfall. Temp seemed awfully cold. We were expecting lows for the entire trip to be in the low 60s. This felt more like the 40s. And the rain was fairly constant. Thankfully all our clothes were inside, although still damp. So I said, yep, just go back to bed for a while. We'll wait this out. Forecast says it should burn off by 9 or 10. Come 9:30, it was not letting up, so I decided, okay, we'll do our best to get ready in the tent here, and we just need to get packed up and start moving. So at this point, we were on the PCT near the connector to the Lost Lake Trail, and our goal for that day was Wadham Lake. Just shy of 12 miles up trail would be the longest day we'd had. The night before, I'd been looking over the Gut Hook app, it's called Far Out now, and saw lots of kind of conflicting notes about trail conditions coming up. I saw things talking about seemingly hundreds of downed trees, and then I saw notes saying nope, trail crews came through and trees were freshly sawn and trails were clear. So once we got our water topped off and everything and started on trail with the minimal rain gear we had, I was very happy to see fresh sawdust on the ground and lots of logs kind of rolled out of the way, making trail access easy. That cleared trail lasted for less than 2 miles, at which point we began to encounter lots of downed trees. Something I did not account for in prepping my wife for this was the lateral movements. And so my poor wife's hip flexors were very, very sore and pert near immobile before we began having to climb over trees. Keep in mind, it is constantly raining and in the 40s. So we had on rain gear and as much extra clothing as we could, which wasn't much. So after the 30th down tree that we either had to climb over, under, or blaze a path around, I stopped counting. That tells you just how many there were. That doesn't count the ones you just kind of step over. Add in the cold conditions and the rain. We didn't stop to take many pictures. We didn't stop for any breaks other than to go to the bathroom. At one point, we had to stop so my wife could go use the restroom, and it was taking her a while to dig her cat hole. And I broke down a little bit and started crying because I was so miserable. My feet hurt, I was cold, my hands were shaking. And you know, everybody we were passing on trail was like, what is up with this weather? Like, we were not expecting this. So just overall miserable, but a good reason to kind of just keep pressing on. At another point, shortly after that, there were 2 giant down trees you had to climb over, and they were far enough apart you couldn't just like jump from one to the other. So my wife climbs up on one. She has a very brief breakdown, says I need a minute, cries a little bit, and we were both definitely over the day, but at this point we don't have any good extraction points. So we're just going to keep on keeping on. Finally, probably around, I want to say 6 o'clock, we make it to Wadham Lake Campground, which is, I mean, it's a legit campground. Parking's pretty far away. We didn't see any other signs of people there. We picked one of the first sites we saw, right, 20 feet from the water, set up our camp, And despite it being August and there being a fire ban, I was so cold, couldn't feel my feet, was desperate for something dry. So we spent probably over half an hour trying to get a fire started. It was still drizzling. Filled all our water bags, you know, even though everything was wet, it took forever to get the fire started. There is still a fire ban. And this is when one of my favorite ever backpacking moments happened. Two backpackers, I assuming, who probably parked at the campground there to start their trip, came by. They looked like the Gordon's fishermen in all of their rain gear. They said, "Guess you don't give a fuck about the fire ban." And I thought, nope, my safety, my ability to feel my toes is ever so slightly more important to me at this point. Not saying it was a good decision, but it was my decision at that time. And knowing we were at a legit campground, I knew the fine was $500. And my thought was, if a park ranger came down and said that's $500, I'd offer him $1,000 because I'd probably want another fire in the morning. Thankfully, we never saw any park rangers, never had any issues, and honestly, it made me kind of laugh just thinking about how hard it was to get the fire started, and we were doing it lakeside. So we got this little fire going. We did our best to string our clothes over it to dry them, even just a little bit. It helped just ever so slightly, but it was a bit of a morale booster. Warmed our fingers and our toes up enough to know we could survive the night and keep on going. By the time we went to bed, skies were starting to clear a little bit, and it seemed pretty obvious our final day would be, or final couple days, would probably be a little better weather. But we were just sore, bruised, lots of cuts on our legs from climbing over the logs. My poor wife was having to basically belly roll over them because she couldn't get her hips to flex enough to easily go over it. So again, lateral movement is important when you're training. But the upside, we did 12 miles a day, longest by far, because we didn't dare stop for a risk of hypothermia or you know, just being cold and miserable. So check back next month to hear about day 4 of our trail. Thankfully, we did not break any other major laws, and we did not start a wildfire, thank goodness. But sometimes you got to do what you got to do to maintain that morale and make sure you can make it out of there okay. For more information on the trails and all the items you see on this channel, visit topshelfbackpacking.com. And until I see you again, cheers.